Hi guys, before I begin, I highly recommend to watch this drama. It's really heart-touching, and you still gonna find more love and romance in the whole series. The story begins with Gia, who moves with her family to a new house, but she quarrels with her brother and accidentally hits her head against the wall. Then the family goes to their neighbor's house, whom they have known for a long time, and when Joe enters the room, it is clear that he hates Gia since childhood. After that, Gia heard Joe and his friends mocking her, and the mark of the blow in her head, so Gia entered the room and scolded them for what they said, then left them and went to prepare herself as tomorrow is her first day in high school. But she wakes up late, and then she sees Joe, who was also late, so Gia walks from a different road than his, but they both arrive late, and they stand in the hall as punishment, and because they were the last to enter the classroom, they were forced to sit together in the same desk. But Joe continues to quarrel with her, so that she asks to change the seat and sit next to another guy, and the next day Joe's mother asks him to give Gia a box of candy, but Gia refuses to take it from him. After that, Joe's father asks him to take care of Gia and drive her to school because she does not have any friends, so Joe was forced to do so, and one day, they were on their way, and when a car was about to hit her, Joe pulled her at the last moment. At school, Gia kept getting away from Joe, but there was a ball about to hit her, before Joe caught it and protect her. Then Gia goes to give chocolate to her colleagues so that she can get close to them, and as a reward to Joe for what he did, she gives him one, but Joe's friend, who was jealous of Gia, told her that he didn't like chocolate, but she was surprised that Joe ate it. Time passes and Gia's relation with Joe began to be better. But one day Gia discovers that her grades in the exam were very bad, so Joe begins to mock her and call her stupid. Then a new girl who was with Joe in middle school and had a crush on him moves to the school, and when she learns that Joe and Gia are neighbors, she begins to harass her, but one day, when Gia was drawing on the board, she was about to fall, but Joe caught her, and when Gia noticed that Joe became kinder with her, she decided to give him a chance. But she was surprised by him, the next day, telling her that her way of pronouncing English was wrong, so Gia felt angry and scolded him. But when the teacher asked her to read in front of the class, the teacher scolded her because of her wrong pronunciation, and everyone mocked her. Gia felt embarrassed and sad, and she went to her best friend Sue, who was with her in middle school and is 2 years older than her. Sue asked her not to be sad, and he gave her books to study from, and when Joe saw that, he did not know why he felt angry, so he gave her his notebook to study from it too. One day, Gia was walking in the school when she bumped into someone and the juice fell on her by mistake. But Joe saw her and went quickly and took off his coat and put it on her. Gia thanked Joe for his kind behavior, and after that, the relationship between them improved a lot, until one day Joe and Gia were eating in a restaurant when Sue saw them and sat with them, so Joe felt jealous and angry. And on the way back to home, Joe and Gia saw the school teacher, so they decided to hide from him, but it rained, so Joe put his shirt over Gia's head to protect her. Time passes and the teacher tells everyone that their seats will change according to their grades in the exam, and whoever has bad grades will not sit next to any student higher than him. And because Gia knows that Joe is superior, she begins to study hard so as not to leave her seat next to him. But unfortunately she gets sick, and she goes to the exam tired, and she could not do well, and because her illness continued, she missed several days from school as well. When Joe found out about her illness, he quickly went to her house and gave her test grades, which were very poor as expected. Then he left her his number and told her to call him if she needed anything. When Gia returned to school, she was surprised that Joe was still sitting next to her in the desk, and when she asked him about that, he told her that he decided not to do well in the exam so that he would stay next to her. So Gia rejoiced a lot and invited him to lunch, and there, Joe learned that today is her birthday, so he took her to show her how the planets and stars look at her day of birth. After that, a student named Kiki goes to Gia and gives her a love letter to give it to Joe, so Gia did. But she felt jealous thinking that Joe was having a relationship with this girl, so she avoided talking to him completely. And in sports class, she chose to be in another student team, which made Joe almost explodes with jealousy. After that Kiki goes and gives Gia candy to give to Joe and so does Gia. When Joe read the letter and saw the candy, he thought it was from Gia, so he was very happy, but Gia's friend told him that these things were from another girl named Kiki. Joe felt frustrated and angry, and went to Gia to scold her and tell her that he didn't need her attempts to get any girl close to him because this bothering him. Gia was embarrassed and ran to the classroom and started crying alone. The relationship remained tense between them, but Joe was watching her from afar and was jealous of anyone approaching her. And on his birthday, Joe left her a message telling her that he is waiting for her in his birthday. Gia at the same time decided to buy him a gift as he did with her. But she was hesitated to go to his birthday party, but when she saw the message, she ran to him quickly, but when she arrived at the party place, she was surprised that it was empty and everyone had gone, but Joe came out from behind, and told her that he had waited for her because he knew that she would come. Then they sat down to celebrate together, and because Gia did not have a phone, Joe bought her one, and she was very happy, and she started playing with it until she called Joe by mistake. Joe answered the phone eagerly, but Gia was very embarrassed so she hung up. Time passes and they return to school, and there, the teacher asks them if they will study science or arts. And because Joe was superior, he decided to join the scientific classes, and when Gia asked him about what class she would join, Joe told her to join what she likes. So Gia decided to join the scientific classes with Joe, but unfortunately because of her bad grades, Gia got a few marks, which were not enough for her to join Joe's university, and because she wanted to be with him, she decided to repeat the year again so that she could get high marks next year. When Joe learned this, he felt sad, especially that he would have to travel for college, but he encouraged Gia and told her that he trusts her abilities and that he is waiting for her next year to join his college. Indeed, Gia began to study hard until she succeeded and was able to join the same college with Joe. At this time, Joe was at the university facing problems because his father was the university president, but he was accused of forgery, so they began to investigate about him, which is why Joe's situation was bad at the university. But he went back to his city, to visit Gia and his mother, but he heard Gia talking to Sue, telling him that her family had scolded her for her choice of the scientific section, and that she decided to repeat the year in order to get enough grades to join Joe's university, and that she was doing all this for him. Joe felt sad about Gia's condition and thought that their relation would always make her put pressure on herself, so he decides that he will stay away from her so as not to cause her any pain again. On Gia's first day in college, she goes and calls Joe loudly in front of everyone, so Joe quickly goes to her and takes her away. Gia confesses her love to Joe, but he rejects her feelings, and tells her to focus on her studies and stay away from him. Gia didn't know why Joe changed like that, so she felt broken and started crying. On the other hand, after Joe's father was fired from work, his health conditions deteriorated and he was admitted to the hospital, so Joe started working after college hours so that he could gain money for his father's treatment. When Gia learned all this, she decided that she shouldn't leave him in this condition, so she learned that he was a participant in the drawing club, so she joined them, but he told her that he isn't tea with them, but that he only did electronic work, and because Gia loves drawing, she decided to stay with them. After that, the club went out to a restaurant, and Gia was with them, and she saw Joe working in this restaurant as well, and when his colleague Dong, who hates him, saw him, he began to mock him. So Gia went out behind him to console him, and she gave him a can of juice, but Joe was determined not to let anyone seize her with him, so that they don't start mocking her like him, so he took the can and threw it in the trash. Gia felt sad and left quickly, but after she left, Joe took the can and kept looking at it and crying. And because Gia continued her attempts to get close to him, Joe told her that the computer department that he joined would provide him with a scholarship next year, and that he would travel to study abroad, so Gia decided to join the department as well and study hard to get the scholarship and travel with him. Joe felt angry because she was still pressuring herself for him, so he decided to keep away from her until she gave up, but Gia did not give up and went to his workplace, but he scolded her, but Gia waited for him outside and because it was late, Joe had to take her home, and on the way Gia was about to fall but Joe caught her quickly, and from his looks, Gia knew that he loves her, and she decides to never give up in her attempts to get him back, so Joe found no choice but to help her in study, in order to make it easy for her. Indeed, Gia was able to succeed in her test, and as a token of thanks to Joe, she decided to give him a box of chocolates as a gift, but Joe's friend in college came to him and ate from the box. Joe was annoyed by this, but the girl took the whole box and left before Joe could stop her, and the next day Gia saw the box with the girl who told her classmates that Joe gave it to her. Gia got angry and went to him shouting at him for what he had done, so Joe decided to take advantage of the matter and told her that he really did that, and asked her to leave him alone and focus on studying only. Here, Gia felt sad and decided to give up, and that she would not speak to him again. Then Gia met Sue by chance, and he told her that he works in a company, and when she told him what Joe had done, Sue told her to stay away from him and focus on future, so Gia decided to leave the computer department and focus on drawing that she loves. Then she showed her work to the president of one of the drawing exhibitions, and she was impressed with her, and decided to hire her in her company. As for Joe, he discovered that he could not bear Gia's being away from him, so he wanted to apologize to her and confess his love. But the university's drawing club went to an interview with the company that Gia works for, and Joe was of course with them, but he was surprised that Sue was the director of public relations there, so Joe felt jealous of him, especially when he knew he met Gia before. After the meeting, Sue told Joe that he loves Gia. So Joe felt frustrated, and told him that she loves only him, and would stay with him, but Gia was listening to them sad and angry. And when Joe came out after her, Gia told him that she is not a toy in his hand, and told him to leave her and never approach her again, but Joe went to her and told her that he was doing all this for her, so that she would not have to put pressure on herself for him, and that he also did not want her reputation to be affected by her closeness to him, especially after the problems his father had. But Gia still can't forgive him. But Joe kept trying badly with her, and confessed his love for her, so Gia felt happy and decided to forgive him. After that Joe was able, with the help of Sue and Gia, to find out who framed his father's forgery case, and finally proved his father's innocence. Joe proposed to marry Gia, then he took her their high school, and they sat on the same desk, and Joe told her that he loved her since those days, and he was about to join the arts section for her, but when she joined the science one, he thought she loved it so he had changed his mind. Gia was very happy with his confesses, and they lived happily. This is all for today's drama, which I like it very much, and I hope you like it too.